Yeah. Welcome to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast, the podcast so unofficial it doesn't have a home. Here's your host, from In Hindsight, Nathan Heitz. From Steelers Nation Australia, Mark Davison. And from State of the Steelers, Daniel J. Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast. I'm Dan.
Your sound went out, I think. Your sound went out real quick. Yeah, you're good. Give Daniel some, give him a second, guys, while he gets his sound going. Another episode, Unofficial Steelers Podcast.
I'm back.
Yeah, there he goes. There he goes.
Was everything out? Yeah, y'all couldn't hear anything?
Right as you pretty much said the intro, it went out.
Gotcha. I don't know what's going on with my dang Focusrite. It's been doing this a lot. Well, sorry, everybody. Welcome back to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast. We're going to be previewing the upcoming game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Seattle Seahawks. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Nathan. Nathan, happy belated Merry Christmas.
Yes.
How was your holidays, my man?
It was good, man. Christmas is always a good time here in my household, man. I've always loved it since a kid. So just being able to be with the family and get people things and put up all the decorations. And I don't know, my favorite part's always the anticipation. Always kind of the build up, the lead up and stuff like that. And then it happens and it's over just like that. But it was good. Everybody had a good time being able to spend it with my people out here. It was good, man. It was good. How was yours?
It wasn't too bad, man. And the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Cincinnati Bengals made it all too much sweeter. You know, in a game where Mason Rudolph came through, showed up, had 290 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, could have had a lot more. You know, I assume that, you know, with a better time with the ones and more chemistry built with his receivers, that those misses that he had down the field to Deontay Johnson, to the Calvin Austin, that were both thrown. One was thrown short, one was thrown deep. I think that those are going to kind of calm down a little bit, you know, given the fact that he has more reps, more time, more, you know, chemistry built with them. I'm excited about this game. The Steelers are still in playoff contention. There's a lot of things that need to happen still. I mean, a lot of teams need to lose. I think that, you know, it'd be good for the Tennessee Titans. I mean, not the Tennessee Titans, the Indianapolis Colts, the Houston Texans, and the Jacksonville Jaguars to lose. Not to mention the Buffalo Bills. Now, I think all of them are favored this week because they're playing not the most difficult schedule, but each one of those teams have had their issues. So going into this game, how hopeful are you that the Steelers can continue what they're doing and maybe perhaps, you know, find themselves in the playoffs?
It's possible, of course, given that anything can happen. Still have my concerns, still reserved about it, but they can, not that they can't go in and beat Seattle or anything. I think it might be a little bit of an even matchup, but the main thing that's going to hurt is the Steelers are still depleted in the secondary, and Seattle's got guys that can break free out there. I don't know if DK Metcalf's going to play, but Seattle's got some guys. Oh, what's up, Devin? How you doing, man? Seattle has some guys, and that's a little concerning on that end. But they can go in and keep it competitive. The offense might just have to do a little bit more than even maybe what it did last week. So there's a lot of other factors going around the league, like Trevor Lawrence is out this week for Jacksonville. I don't know if CJ Stroud's going to play or not for the Texans. So there's a couple things going on outside of this game. Dolphins play the Ravens. So I don't know. There's some things we can dive more a little deeper into it, but Seattle and the Steelers, like Seattle's a team I think that probably their fans expected more from them this year. Geno hasn't really been the guy he was last year. He's easily susceptible to mistakes, turnovers as well. So that's something. But then they also have Kenneth Walker too, who can play. And the Steelers are very, very thin at linebacker once again. So there's some factors there that can go against them. But I don't know. I think the offense might just have to try to do a little bit more than what they did last week, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that this is a game that can be higher scoring, especially because, like you mentioned, the defense, the secondary for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I went back and watched some film. The one thing that does kind of concern me, maybe not the most, there's a lot of things that concern me on it. But, they're going to be utilizing Rowe and Patrick Peterson as their safeties. Now, Pat Pete did well when he was, when he was supposed to be doing his coverage aspect of it. But when it came time to crash down into the line or there's a running back coming up and it's his dude, he didn't seem like the most willing person to go in there and crash in. So I'm a little bit concerned to that aspect. He kind of was letting off a little bit when it came down to tackling some of the bigger guys, which is understandable. He was a cornerback for his entire career. That wasn't his job for the majority of it, was to tackle dudes. Mm-hmm. And, I just think that part is a little bit concerning because you're missing, the Minka Fitzpatrick where he's going to put his, face in the pile and make a tackle, or the Monty KZ who's been, suspended for the rest of the year. He had no problems going in there and taking down some guys. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a concern for me. And the middle is going to be, I think that Pete Carroll and the Seahawks are probably going to run some Texas routes with their running backs and put Miles Jack and probably Blake Martinez in uncomfortable positions. I don't think that you're going to see a lot of Mark Robinson in this game, given the fact that you have a lot of passing options here. And Seattle has been known to throw the ball quite a bit. They have some two tight ends that are pretty good, Noah Fant and Greg Disley I don't remember. Disley, I don't remember what his first name is. Will Disley. And something like that. Hopefully he doesn't make me remember his name after this.
Same thing.
Right. But so I think that the middle of the field is going to be attacked because of that being the weakness. The Steelers are going to have to get to Geno Smith in order to prevent some of those things.
Yeah.
So do you think that I think what TJ Watt's at 17 sacks. Do you think he hits 20 this year?
Oh no, they got 2 more games, and they got one against the Ravens as well, who have a stout O-line. 1 second.
They do have a stout O-line, but if they win this week, they ain't got nothing to play for. So a lot of those players might not be there, including Lamar Jackson. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm gonna say he just misses it, though. I'm gonna say he just misses it. Just as a way, and the reason why I say that, it's just hard to hit 20 plus. And so just given that type of reason, he can definitely do it because obviously he's done it before. That'd be cool if he hit over it or hit that mark. But I'm just going to give a little respect to the fact of how challenging that is. And I'm going to say he just misses it. Maybe he gets like 19 and a half.
Oh, that'd be crazy, man. If he hits 20, he joins just a few people that have hit 20 sacks in 2 seasons in their career, one being his brother, J.J. Watt. Right now he's leading in it's between him, Michael Parsons, and Myles Garrett, as far as the 3 front runners for Defensive Player of the Year. And for some reason, they're putting, TJ Watt the third on that list when he has more sacks, tackles, interceptions, passes defended.
Right.
I think every stat across the board he's got on those guys. What's your opinion on that?
I think there's just a narrative, dude. I think there's an agenda. I really do.
Yeah.
I think there's an agenda. I think just for whatever reason, Myles Garrett's beloved by PFF and in the NFL. And Myles Garrett's a great player as well, but you can definitely make a debate on who should win it this year. Micah Parsons, he's a guy that's going to be at the top of the league for a while, but what TJ Watt's done, I take over what Micah Parsons has done this year for sure. But I think there's just an agenda, dude. I really do.
Yeah.
I think there's always
Yeah,
agenda, man. I mean, heck, I don't even think there should be a quarterback that wins MVP, and I guarantee they're going to give it to a quarterback.
what quarterback you think they're going to give it to?
Probably Lamar.
Yeah, that would make
And
sense.
Lamar's not, to me, he's not doing MVP things. No quarterback is.
Nah. Now, when Mason Rudolph last week had the highest quarterback rating on amongst all quarterbacks, yeah.
It's,
he
it's
did a
just been
good
bad.
job, though. He
Yeah,
did a good job. He did a good
it's been
job
really
last
bad,
week.
though. Yeah.
Yeah, the play this year offensively has been bad, but I think there's a lot of things that deal with that. I mean, a lot of starting quarterbacks have gone down, whether it be for injury or bad play. You've had a lot of other players in key positions go down. I mean, there's been so many stars on IR this year across the board, and there's a lot of questions as to why are they happening. The NFL is looking at the hip drop tackle, from tackling from behind and dropping on the hip, and also I think that maybe there's an actual push to get rid of, turf fields and go back to the grass across the board. I think that would be the best. I mean, these teams make so much money. They can afford to maintain a grassy field.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right. 100%. So, yeah.
That's just my thoughts. But going back to this game, Witherspoon, rookie cornerback for the Seahawks, is questionable. Pete Carroll said it's going to be a game time decision. If he doesn't go, it's going to be Artie Burns. And at middle linebacker position, I think it's already been determined that Devin Bush is going to be the guy there. Are you excited or nervous about playing some of these guys that may have, they might have some intimate details about the Steelers and how they want to run things and things like that? What are your thoughts?
It's going to be kind of fun to see them out there and what they do. I don't think anybody, when we look at them at face value, probably nobody should be concerned. But for some reason, it seems like, for some reason, it seems like that, and it doesn't just happen with the Steelers or anything. It happens with other teams. But for some reason, it seems like guys just end up having a big game or a good game against a former team. So maybe one of the two will. I don't know. But like neither one of them concern. I mean, Devin Bush has 3 tackles on the year, and Artie Burns, obviously, we know that it's crazy to think that he's still even around the league still. So it'll be funny, like just to see that out there. But they should definitely test both of them and be like, all right, let's see what you guys got. They 100% should test them both.
I agree. Last week the Steelers were targeting the outside. Mainly because the last time that the Steelers faced the Cincinnati Bengals, they were targeting Pat Freiermuth a lot. The Bengals were not going to let Pat Freiermuth beat them. Given what Mason Rudolph showed on film last week by throwing the ball deep and, not afraid to do so, that's going to be something that the Seattle Seahawks are going to have to account for. If Witherspoon is out, they're going to have a backup cornerback there. I think they have some other issues health-wise across the team. But also in the secondary. So, if your best cornerback is out, you're going to have to, rotate help out there. I think that's going to leave the middle of the field open. I think that Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, he might end up getting some extended looks, maybe even Connor Hayward. I'm sorry. So I think that the tight ends are going to play a pivotal role in this game. I think we're going to see a lot of 13 personnel out there. Seattle's defense has struggled against the run. The Steelers have done all right. If you have a Devin Bush there in the middle of the field who, when he was a Steeler, at least one of the things that was concerning was his lack of physicality in the running game and willingness to go and tackle.
Yeah. Run at him, man. Yeah. See if he's changed anything.
Right. Especially if the back was big. This is the time for Najee Harris to go and put, his face mask on his chest and put him in the ground and just run him over and keep going. I think that's what we're going to see in this game. I'm not expecting a lot of deep, throws like we saw last week. I think that Mason might take, he's obviously going to take a shot or two here or there, but I don't think we're going to see the aggressiveness that we saw last week, but I do think we're going to see competent quarterback play. Like I mentioned before, I think this team has a lot of playmakers, and that if you can get the ball in their hands, they can do something with it. They don't need a quarterback that can thread a needle or anything right now. I mean, would it be great? Yeah. But I don't think Mason's that guy. But what Mason is, he's going to be an average quarterback that's going to be able to put the ball in front of the receiver so that they can do something after the fact. And, I'm excited to see what they do. I think we're going to see a lot of screens too. The screen game didn't really work a lot.
I hate that
here's
word.
the thing.
Oh my God, I hate it.
It didn't work before because there was a lot of issues before. You had certain situations where Jalen Warren, when he was, catching a screen, he was on the wrong side of the linemen that were blocking for him. He was already past that.
Right. Yeah.
There was a couple of situations where Kenny Pickett threw the running back a back shoulder pass in the backfield.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
The running back had to turn around in a couple of instances, and most of them it was Jalen Warren. He'd have to turn around and catch the ball behind him, and then by the time he turned back around, pressure was already there. So I think that maybe perhaps with a Mason Rudolph who's a little bit more comfortable in changing things, like for instance that Boykin play. Did you know that he changed that at the line of scrimmage? Yeah, he went. Yeah, he went up to the line of scrimmage. It was supposed to be a run. I assume that, or what I heard was he told Boykin, everybody thinks, every time you come out here, it's a run. I'm going to throw it to you. Safety's not, respecting you. And so he changed the play right there on the field from a running play to a pass out to Boykin. And the reason why you do that is now he has to play him honest or more honestly, because now that's there. Now they can't just crash in on the run. So he made the running game better by just making that one decision. If they're letting the third guy do that, who hasn't played with the first team at all the entire year, who's been the scout QB, do you really think that they were handcuffing Kenny Pickett and telling him not to change plays?
No, I wouldn't. I don't understand why a coaching staff would even do that.
Right. That was the biggest rumor that, Pickett couldn't change a play. He didn't have any audibles. He didn't have any hot routes.
No, I don't buy it.
Yeah, I don't buy it either. Not anymore.
Every starting quarterback's able to do it to a point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and shoot, it worked out. Mason went deep also when on that 3rd and 1, that was a touchdown to George Pickens. That wasn't necessarily primarily where the play was going to go, but saw a single high safety and one-on-one coverage on the outside. So he put it up, and the thing is, he put it up in a place where only Pickens, he put it accurate. He dropped it in a bucket. That throw was perfect. I was like, man, this guy has arm talent. Can he keep it all together? That's going to be the big question. What do you think the Steelers are going to have to do offensively if they're going to win this game?
Well, to be honest, and somebody made a comment that I think it was Steeler Wade saying that he's read that the Seahawks have been throwing over 60% of the time. And 100%, they love to throw the football. I'm concerned with Kenneth Walker because I think that he, especially with our linebacker situation, it's definitely a key spot that they can try to run the football on this team. But if they're going to stick with what they've been doing, especially probably trying to test the Steelers secondary, it might be at the point the Steelers are going to have to be pass heavy. Because depending on if it's a situation where Seattle's throwing the ball and you have 3 guys in your wide receiver core for Seattle that can make plays, it's probably one of the better trios in the league. And if they're going to be able to execute on that more times than not, that's why I said earlier, it might be a situation the Steelers offense is going to have to do more than they did last week if they want to keep up. So that's one of my biggest concerns about the game. And that's why I think it's definitely possible that the offense might be throwing the ball even more than they did last week for that specific reason. But really, to answer your question, what the offense has to do, you don't want to turn the ball over, of course. You can say that with any game. But I think ultimately, you have to be able to, especially with where Seattle's secondary is at right now, because their secondary is missing some guys, could be missing some guys. You want to test that. You want to get some guys like what you were talking about earlier with your tight ends. If you can utilize 2 out of those 3 in middle of the field type play, that's something that you can do on that. You want to test these Seahawk linebackers right now with your 2-headed run game. And if you're able to find productive drives that way, then take some shots to George Pickens, take some shots maybe to a DJ or somebody else. But I think just overall, it doesn't even necessarily have to be just pushing the ball down the field. But I'm afraid that it's going to get to that point where they're just going to have to throw it more because of if Seattle's getting good opportunities, if they're continuing drives, if the Steelers secondary guys like Levi Wallace and Eric Rowe, if they're struggling out there, it might be a situation where you have to have that. But I think just from a general standpoint, you can test these linebackers. If you can run the ball decently, help Mason in that situation to set him up, that might be something that we see as well. It's easy just to say, "Oh, I'll get the ball in George Pickens' hands," stuff like that. But I think that tight end utilization is really important, and maybe that might try to open up some sideline type throws. If they're hitting that middle of the field, maybe that might open up some sideline throws for a Pickens or somebody like that. So, because Rudolph can obviously get the ball down the field, right? It's just a matter of how many times they decide to do it. It's a matter of what the defense looking at, if they're covering George Pickens, if they're taking away that sideline, et cetera, et cetera. So those are type of things that I think the offense will be looking at. But I think the scariest thing is if Seattle is executing on their passing offense, and then you're relying on Mason Rudolph to throw over 40 times this game. You know what I mean? You're on mute, man. You're on mute still.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you don't want. Regardless of what quarterback you have, you want to limit them to about maybe 35 attempts. Maybe 30 even better. I mean, I think last week,
heck,
Mason Rudolph
when
had
Kenny was
27.
throwing under 30, the offense, like they were winning better that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Now let's kind of look at the injury report. So Seattle has a lot of players out. D. Eskridge, the receiver, is out. Tackle Jason Peters' foot is out. Linebacker Frank Clark, he is out. Samuel Adams, the safety, he is out. Defensive end Mario Edwards, he is out. Kenneth Walker is questionable with a shoulder. He's going to be a game time decision. Nick Bellore, he's questionable with a knee. Jordan Brooks is questionable with a knee as well. DK Metcalf is questionable, but I believe they asked Pete Carroll if he's going to play, and by the looks of it, he is. He's got a stiff back apparently, and so those type of things could work in the favor if he does go out there. He's not going to be as physical. He's not going to be able to be as physical going up against a Joey Porter Jr. And I think that if Metcalf isn't obviously 100%, that's going to work in the favor of Porter. And Devon Witherspoon is questionable with his hip as well, but you got a cornerback out there. If he plays and he has a hip issue and he's covering, I don't know, Deontay Johnson, you go there,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Because that guy can move.
100%.
And if he has any problems with his flexibility, then you target that man. He's a rookie cornerback. I understand he was a highly recruited corner and sought out in the draft, but this is the pros. As far as the Steelers go, Landon Roberts is out with a pectoral. Minka Fitzpatrick is out again with his knee. How concerned are you with Minka's knee? Like, we haven't gotten any update as far as like what kind of knee issue was it?
Right.
If it was a MCL, did they have to scope it? Any of those things. I just know he hasn't gone on injury.
I'm not concerned with Minka because this is really the first time in his career he's been battling like a continual injury.
Yeah.
So his knee, obviously, it's not serious at the point where like they had like something was like majorly torn, but it's definitely banged up and obviously re-aggravated it. But I'm not concerned in the sense that like this is something that's like after this year or anything like that. Like, he's a relatively healthy player that plays in the league. And it was a matter of time till he had a season where he was probably going to miss time. It usually happens for every player, even if they're fairly healthy throughout their career. There's years they miss more time than not. So yeah, kind of weird. Like they haven't really specifically said like what is it? Is a sprain? Is there a sprain in there? Is there swelling, stuff like that? But like long as there's nothing like torn there,
Mhm.
then it'll get taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Trent Thompson, he's out with the neck. He was
That
a
sucks for him too.
participant in
Like,
practice.
yeah, he had,
Yeah,
especially with Minka being out, this would have been a good opportunity for him these last couple games.
yeah, I agree 100%. He said that I think he was talking with one of the beat writers, and he mentioned that they're targeting the playoffs as far as his return. Kenny
For
Pickett is
who?
questionable with an ankle.
Trenton Thompson?
Trenton Thompson, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Kenny Pickett, he's questionable with an ankle. Obviously, they're going to go with Mason Rudolph. I mean, they're going to give him the nod. If Kenny's number 2, do you think that there's a shortened leash there for Mason Rudolph?
Possibly. Very possible. But to me, Daniel, is that Kenny, to me, and I know there's people on Twitter saying he's not fully healthy. To me, he's ready to go. I mean, he's literally said himself he's ready to play. He's ready to get out there. To me, they just know that Kenny Pickett's play hasn't been good. And they know that his play hasn't lined up with what they've hoped it would have been. And they're going to go with Mason Rudolph, who has pushed the ball, who has already scored points for the offense that they haven't scored all year, especially in a spot where you have 2 games left in the season. You're still trying to get in the playoff race. So to me, it speaks more volumes that I think that they've realized that there's a lot of questions here with him right now. And that's why I am saying, that anybody out there that thinks Kenny's just going to come in next year and be the starter right away, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the case next year. I really don't. So I'm not going to sit and say who it's going to be, what the quarterback room is going to be, but I think that Omar Khan, and he didn't draft Kenny Pickett either, and I think that Mike Tomlin, they know. Like, listen, they're not stupid. They know that Kenny has not been good. He has not been the first-round pick. There's a reason he's not starting. And it's not because, he's still not fully healthy. No. He's fully healthy, ready to play. He's just not starting because the Steelers want to go with Mason Rudolph that they feel can possibly give them a better chance on offense. That's reality.
Yeah,
That's reality.
I agree.
That's
I mean, earlier,
that's not hate. That's reality.
right, and earlier this year, prior to the firing of Matt Canada, the rumor was that the Steelers were left up to one decision, and it was either bench Kenny or fire Canada. And at one point, Kenny Pickett's benching was the front runner in that equation.
It was on the table, man.
From what I understand, R2, Rooney II comes in and maybe makes a different decision for the Steelers to give Kenny another chance. And I think you're right. You can't give the guy the keys to the car automatically next year.
Exactly.
Is he going to be on the team? Yeah, I don't think the Steelers are going to be able to trade him or get anything back for him that they would want anyways.
No.
And I think that regardless of what happens the rest of this season, I'm not sure that Mason Rudolph is going to be on this team next year either. I mean, he could play himself into another team with a big contract that the Steelers just aren't willing to pay.
I said that
right now.
I said Mason's auditioning for next year.
Yeah. I mean, right now he is, just with what he did, I guarantee you he won himself an opportunity to play next year. Somebody's going to pick him up based on what they saw on the tape from last week. And give
Daniel,
him a chance.
I was talking with a coworker about this just for fun. We're going through teams in the NFL right now that could possibly have a change at quarterback or a competition next year at the quarterback spot. There's about 10 teams that possibly could. Steelers are included.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think that we have a Zach Wilson situation with Kenny, to be honest.
Yeah. I thought it was more of a Josh Rosen.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that Kenny is Zach Wilson. I'm saying we have a Zach Wilson situation where Zach Wilson was drafted just like Kenny Pickett was, struggled a lot, was already looked at that he's probably not the future of the organization. Kenny's in a situation where he's probably not being looked as that. And now they're going to be in a situation where Kenny's going to be going into year 3, just like Zach Wilson was, and Zach Wilson's not the starter. Kenny Pickett couldn't possibly not be the starter next year. And they could possibly, whether it's a veteran guy, whether they draft another rookie, whatever the case is, it's a similar type situation that Zach Wilson's been in. So I think that like Kenny going into year 3, and if he's the backup, let's say the quarterback 2 next year to whoever it is, well, obviously you flopped on that first round pick, but then second of all, it's another thing of where, okay, well, this is another first round pick, as we've seen, that's hasn't lived up to it across the league, and Zach Wilson was the same exact way.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I didn't see a lot of progression in Kenny Pickett's game last season. I know that he ended up winning some games at the end of the year, but those games were always down to the wire. There was never a comfortable game in those games. And in my opinion, if the Steelers defense wasn't elite and top notch last season, Steelers aren't winning as many games as they did. I think that a lot of people are saying, like, for instance, when they look at Kenny Pickett's record and they're saying, oh, this year he's 7-3 as a starter when he finishes games.
Who cares?
To me, it's not him being 7-3. I think it's the defense and the special teams are 7-3. There were games this year where the defense outscored the offense. Yeah, there were games where the special teams outscored the offense. I think it was the Green Bay Packers. They got a safety, and defense got some turnovers in the field where the team was able to put up some field goals. So the offense has stunk across the board. And it's been this way, all season this year. Last year, like I said, there was a little bit more hope, and you could see Kenny Pickett, doing some things late in games. And then, you thought, hey, if he can get the rest of it together, I was listening to, so I'm a part of Steel Curtain Network, formerly known as Behind the Steel Curtain. And I was listening to Jeff Hartman, who's our editor there. And he was talking with a Seahawks insider or whatnot. They were having their podcast, and he brought a Seahawks guy on. And, when he asked him to evaluate like Kenny Pickett, what they think, and he's like, yeah, man, we're not scared of Kenny. I don't know if it's the weak arm or the little hands and the 2 gloves, but yeah, I mean, we'd rather be playing Kenny. And so that's the situation, right? I mean, there's been times like where, for instance, this year, the Steelers were going to go play in Cleveland, and Deshaun Watson was up and down at that time. I would have rather played Deshaun Watson, the starting quarterback, in that situation than their backup guy. And I think that's how people are looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. They rather have played Kenny Pickett versus anybody behind him, until Mitch Trubisky came out, then anybody would want to play.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so freaking funny. Just whenever Mitch and stuff. It's honest. I just laugh. Like, it's just, I think it's hilarious. I really do. Like, it's not hilarious because like he's lost his games, but it's hilarious just in the sense that like he's the highest paid backup and he's one of the worst quarterbacks I think I've ever watched.
Yeah.
Real quick, Brian, what's up, man? Good to see you.
What's going on?
Thanks for coming.
Did you see his face? So during the Color Rush game, when Mason Rudolph was backing him up, and this is the game where the chant started for Mason Rudolph. He didn't come into the game in that game, but that's when the chant started. And they showed Mitch Trubisky on the sideline, and he looked panicked. He was just sitting there kind of looking around. He wasn't poised. He's not confident. Maybe perhaps if he gets another option somewhere else where he's actually given an opportunity, because I don't think he was. As soon as he struggled in the first game that he was a Pittsburgh Steeler, the Kenny chance came out. And so, that probably can have a number on your confidence and things like that. So I just think here in Pittsburgh, he's never going to be a good quarterback. And, maybe he can find his way on the Browns or something, and we can see him twice a year. But, he's not good here. But going up against Mason Rudolph and seeing what he was able to do, that's a different story. I was listening to the Ramon Foster show, and he was talking about how Kevin Colbert really thought that Mason Rudolph was something special, and that he thought that he could end up being the guy and the replacement for Ben Roethlisberger. And earlier this week, Mason Rudolph kind of, I think, threw some shade at Ben. I'm not sure if you heard the comment. He was talking about how this quarterback room looks out for each other and puts out, if there's something that they see that is going to be helpful to the offense, they share it with the other quarterbacks, unlike other quarterback rooms before.
Right.
So obviously, it's only been Pickett and Ben that he's, been behind. So, obviously it was Ben Roethlisberger. So, he was put in a bad situation. I think that, he only has 11 games now under his belt. He has, less than half of the games that Kenny Pickett has. I would venture to say, I think we know more about Kenny Pickett than we do about Mason Rudolph.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair.
So, with Mason, one of the biggest problems in 2019 was his happy feet. And it was always just kind of like blah, right? There was no splash. It was just there. And you couldn't tell after every game if he was going to be a guy or if he was going to be a bum. You know what I mean? That was the thing in 2019. The happy feet are gone.
Right. And when he took over in 2019, I was hoping I was hoping for him to do well, because it was they had a first round grade on him, drafted him in the third round. He had some tough luck that year as well with certain things that happened. But my biggest thing is that if there's really anything there, why has it been 5 years that the Steelers have not wanted to put him out for? That's always been my thought with him, is not that I didn't think he was trash, because I always thought he could have probably been a capable backup, at least that. But why has it taken so long for the Steelers to elevate him to a higher role in the quarterback room in the last 5 years? And that's something
that's because of Ben.
Well, right.
But do you ever see a situation
even
where
even the last 2 years,
right? But do you think that even if Mason was showing up in practice, you think they're going to bench Ben at any point in his career?
Well, no, I'm not saying not bench him, but he wasn't even other than 2019, he wasn't even QB2. So how
QB2
come
last year or 2 years ago? Ben's last year.
You had, I don't know, maybe he was that year, but you had, but still, I don't, in terms of trying to get him to that point of, because you brought Ben back in 2021. Okay, he came back in 2020. You brought him back 2021. If they thought that something wasn't, if they thought something was there with Mason, I don't know why they would try to delay the fact of him becoming the starter.
I think it comes down to opportunity
when Ben was playing, but why would you delay that then?
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. I think that there was an opportunity for that in 2021. Ben Roethlisberger had came out and he wasn't quiet about the fact. He came out on Footballing and said that it was basically the Rooneys that wanted him back. He didn't think that Kevin Colbert wanted him back his last year, nor did Mike Tomlin. I think they wanted to go in a different direction. I think they wanted to see what Mason Rudolph had that year. But like I said, if Ben wanted to come back and the owner of the team was, had Ben's back, there was nothing that was going to happen that way. And if there was that turmoil between him and between Rudolph and Ben being, the beloved child of Pittsburgh, even the owners are probably going to look at it sideways and not give him an opportunity. It really didn't seem like, it seems like the owners of this team, have done a lot of things. For me, I think that Kenny Pickett coming in last year, I brought this up. I thought that was an owner decision. Leading up to the week that he came in, he had no time, no first team reps whatsoever. And, you would assume if you were going to possibly go to your backup guy, you'd probably give him a little bit of reps. Right. So, he came in at halftime. There was no debate, no question, no nothing. He came up to him and said, "You're in, you're out." And that was it. No explanation. I mean, that's from what I understand. So, those type of things scream out, owner control. And it kind of comes back to what Steeler Lee said is the question. Do you think that the organization is listening too much to the fan chants, opinions, and takes? I don't remember a time when fans will say something and changes are made. I'm not necessarily sure that they're listening to. I just think that the fans are correct. Matt Canada wasn't a great option at the offensive coordinator position. Yeah. He shouldn't have been brought back. And, the quarterback play has been horrible. Whether it's Kenny or whether it's Mitch Trubisky, it's not been to the standard, and so something had to change, regardless of the chance were happening or not. I think a change would have been made. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, yeah, I don't think it's organizations listening to like fans, and the fans are gonna determine sometimes the direction they decide to go. But I think it's just like they realize, like, fans are right as well, and like they hear it. They hear it. They know what the fans want. They know what the fans are talking about. They know what the national media is talking about. They hear those things, of course. Those don't go blind. But I know for sure, like, they're not gonna. I mean, they're a bunch of freaking billionaires. They're not gonna listen to me and Daniel on here and say, "All right, these two said that," and they're gonna go do whatever. But I get your point where sometimes things get loud, and I think when sometimes things get loud, like it was with the Steelers' offense this year and Matt Canada, they were hearing it as well, and it just pretty much coincided with what the fans were saying and what the organization realized and knew something had to change. I wish more organizations in sports did listen to fans and did cough, cough, Pirates. I wish that they would listen more to fans, and that they would even put more ears open to other people's ideas outside their organization. But probably a lot of them are stubborn in their own way, like a Jerry Jones or something like that, and are going to beat to their own drum. I think Art Rooney's a little stubborn in terms of wanting to always do things from really loyalty aspects and how things, tradition, stuff like that. We all know the Steelers are based off tradition. We know that they run off tradition. We know that. But I wish organizations were a little bit more open to listening to some outside minds and stuff like that on what's going on. But I think it just got really loud. It got really loud out here. People were just
that, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's business, right? And if you're putting out stuff that the fans don't want, the fans aren't going to show. They're not going to, they're the Steelers, so they're going to show for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But eventually, if it doesn't change and the performance and the play is miserable, it's going to start to dip down. I mean, I think we saw examples of that throughout portions of the games this year. I think that when San Francisco took over the stadium, that was like an away game.
Yes, they did.
There's been a few games where there's been a lot of yellow seats out there.
Yeah.
So
100%.
I think that it's a business, and if the fans are displeased with something, I think you have to take some sort of consideration, especially if it's not working. What you have out there ain't working.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I want to hit up the comment section real quick, Daniel, and we can
go
get
ahead.
through a couple of these. And I want to bring something up to you and to the chat. Christian says Kenny's a predator. He looks like a tiger on the field. He just needs a new OC, a few years to develop. Mason got lucky. The team was on fire. Pickett would have put up at least 4 passing touchdowns. Christian, I honestly, I feel like you're coming off as a troll, brother. I feel like you're coming off as a troll. Yeah, Kenny's a predator. Well, there was a few times in the fourth quarter that he was doing that, but there's a reason why he had to do it in the fourth quarter. Let's put it that way.
I think that Kenny can get better. It's just, is there enough time for Kenny to get better?
Dude, and that's the thing about it too, is like I was talking to another friend at work, like what I talked about, we were talking about stuff. And I was like, if Kenny was a little younger, maybe it could be a situation where he just, like a Jordan Love, he just really needs to sit behind somebody. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to do that and play that card of bringing in a veteran guy and Kenny sitting for a little bit, I mean, Kenny by that time will be 28 years old.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And he's going to be 26 next year. And that's not great. And it's not really kind of where you want your quarterback who hasn't really done much in the league so far to be at.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's something like, look at Mason Rudolph, it took him several years to settle his feet, to be more decisive. In 2019, when I saw him,
I'm telling you, his footwork impressed the heck out of me, dude, because his footwork did not used to be like that.
No, he was panicky. He was all over the place. Panicky. Yeah. And he wasn't decisive. Like, for instance, there were so many times where I thought he made the right decision to throw the ball in the right place, but it was just like half a second behind.
Yeah.
And if it was just if the game slowed down for him, just that half second, I think I thought he'd be all right.
Sure.
I think it took him some time, but I mean, look, he was 24. He's 20, he was 23 when he came into the league. He's 28 now. It's 5 years. Pickett will be 29.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about it. And it's not that like Kenny can't have a career in the NFL. It's just his situation as the Steelers starter isn't boding well for him. The percent chance of him coming from here to really up here and being the solidified future is hard to kind of get behind. But it's not even to say he can't be a capable backup. Sure, I think he could be a capable backup, number 2 in the NFL, but he hasn't at being 25 years old. And it's hasn't been all his fault in the Steelers offense, but to me, really, if he's showing things throughout the year that like we can sit and say, okay, we like this a lot. This is really good. We really need to get somebody else in here to really help execute this even more. That was really the target thing for me this year with him coming in, but he's not doing X and O and doing this and doing that we're able to sit there and say, okay, these are good right here. These are really good things we're seeing, but he's being really held back, right? Like you're not able to say that. And that was really the thing for me I wanted to say this year is that I knew that the offense still wasn't going to be where it needed to be this season, but I wanted to sit there and say, okay, Kenny's doing X, Y, and Z really well, but look who he's got on the sideline. Look at the offense he's in. We really need to kind of maybe switch some things up, switch a system, switch a scheme, whatever the heck it is. But you can't say that Kenny's doing X, Y, and Z. And that's the problem. In my opinion.
I do think differently than you in a certain aspect as far as this team. I do think that this team outside of the quarterback is built to do something. I think that the offensive line, with
I love the talent. I think that there's good talent there. I really do. But when you look at Canada, you look at the uncertainty with the direction the offense is going to go. That's got to get changed. But you have to admit that also, aside from just the quarterback this year, what they've been trying to do on offense hasn't been helping anybody because you're not using guys. You're not using the middle field. You're not using your tight ends. You're not using Pickens, right? Those are all different type of things that you're not doing well. And you look at other offense in the league, though a lot of most offense sucks in the league. There's still things like teams with these backup quarterbacks are still finding ways to produce. And outside of this game the Steelers just had, the Steelers weren't doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're right.
That's kind of really my thing. I think that there's good talent on this team. You got to shore up a little bit of your line, and you can do that. They're not in a state where they were 2 years ago with their offensive line with Kendrick Green and Dan Moore and Kevin Dotson and guys like that and Trey Turner. They're not at that spot. You have Broderick Jones you drafted. You have James Daniels in there. You've already given a contract to Sayamalu. You got to figure out what you want to do at center, right? You want to figure out what you want to do maybe at right tackle. You don't need to go through the whole line anymore. You've already kind of secured that. There's some talent there. There's some things. Okay, what you can do with Deontay Johnson, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, Daniel, quarterback has been the primary thing. And they got to figure that out sooner than later. But you need to bring in an offensive mind that's not a freaking dinosaur or isn't qualified to be in the NFL. Because I don't want to see a guy come in here that was offensive coordinator of the Giants in 2005. I'm sorry.
Right. But to you, do you think the offensive line looked different this past game? Did they protect better?
They did, but like I'm not, in terms of me watching the game, like Broderick Jones wasn't very good. And I think he just needs to go back to the left side. I 100% do. Like it's hard as a rookie just to completely go from here to there. But I thought that they did a fairly good job from a just general standpoint, but like I can look at, I don't know, I feel like I could look at even a couple weeks ago and for example, and I could sit and say that I even think that they did a good job in terms of their pass pro. And I think that they did a good job in the sense that like they didn't do anything that sure shocked the heck out of me. I think they did a good job keeping Rudolph on his feet, but they've done a good job as well keeping Kenny on his feet other than him running into the sacks.
Right. Right. Well, here's my thing, because even though Kenny does run into some sacks, the offensive line has looked questionable with Kenny Pickett there. I would have thought, logic would have said that with a quarterback that's more of a statue that's not going to be able to move around as much, that there would be maybe perhaps more pressure. I didn't see that in this game. Is that because the pocket awareness was better by by Mason Rudolph? Is it because he was stepping up into the pocket and the offensive line knew where he was going to be at, and they didn't have to, continue to guess where the quarterback was at? Yeah. And he wasn't running into sacks. Well, the one he did have, he kind of ran into, but I thought that they played better, and it was more indicative of the quarterback change as well. When it comes to this team, like, everything falls on the shoulders of your quarterback. If you have one, you're going to be competitive. If you don't, it doesn't matter who you have on the outside or who's running the ball or even what defense you have. You're not going to go anywhere. And the reason why we know this is because right now the Steelers have George Pickens, who can spread the ball down the field. You have the guy in Deontay Johnson, who's been the guy that can get open the most. That's one of his things, is he can create separations. You have, two running backs that have been doing fairly well. And at the end of last year, with a weaker offensive line, we're running the ball very well. The problem is the guy handling the ball. And I think that if, let's just say they did handcuff Kenny Pickett, didn't allow him to change anything or audible, let's put some context to it. Why wouldn't they? Is it because he's limited? Is it because he doesn't know the offense as well? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I know last year, right before the bye week, Mike Tomlin came out and he was on one of his press conferences, and he said, when he was discussing the progression of Kenny Pickett, that he, and this is the only time he ever said anything negative about him, he said that he wished it was faster. Mm-hmm. And that was it. But when it comes to Kenny, and I'm going to go to this question here with Afton. She says, Daniel, after all your film breakdowns, do you think he can develop in his weak area, specifically reading and progression? I think he can in the reads department. I think he can get better in his decisive department as well. There's been times where he makes the right read, he just doesn't let it rip. Even George Pickens made the comment after the post game. He said that personally, Mason Rudolph just let it rip. He took more shots, and that was the difference between why the team looked better and didn't look better, or it had looked bad. So I think that those things can work out. The part that I'm really concerned about is his footwork. And when he gets kind of nervous. So Mason Rudolph didn't really have the happy feet in college. That didn't happen until he got into the pros. That to me was something that he had because of probably the speed of the game, and he was panicking back there. With Kenny, he's had that happy feet and him running around and stuff since college. That's been who he is. I'm concerned about that because that's not going to work in the NFL. He's not fast enough to outrun some of these DNs or these linebackers. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't have the arm talent to throw the ball in weird angles and while on the run and be accurate with it. Right. So it's not going to work in the NFL. So that's my concern when it comes to him. He's going to have to turn himself into a pocket passer, complete pocket passer, and be more decisive and throw the ball in less than 3 seconds. If he can do those things, I think he'll be better. But, he's going to have to give up trying to run around and throw the ball off his back or off, while he's running, to his left, cross body. Probably going to have to give up, just trying to make, time there with his legs, because it's not going to happen in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's like, he's going to get more opportunity next year. But like I said, he's going to be in a competition for it 100%. Claude, what's up, man? Appreciate you tuning in. Charles, Pickett isn't the guy. He's fragile as an Easter egg. Let's go after Jaden Daniels and let him and Pickett battle it out. I'm for Jaden Daniels, man. He's fast as heck, dude. He's fast as heck. So he's got a good deep ball. Probably needs to work on some other aspects. Of course, but why not? But yeah, he's going to go early, depending on the Steelers. Like, it's not to say that they can't trade up. I mean, they've done it before, but that would be really cool. Let's see. We're all expert GMs, all part being a Steeler fan. Hey, man, every fan base is an expert GM. That's how it is. Every fan base is an expert GM with their team. He hasn't put up 3 touchdowns yet. No, he has not. Let's see. Kenny may have been better off going somewhere else. Pressure. I mean, that's possibly true. Being from Pitt, maybe him going somewhere else might have been better for him in general. But you know what, dude? You are where you're drafted, and That's a part of the business. It's part of the league. And Kenny's had opportunity to be able to show things, and it hasn't really quite been there. So that's just the way it is. Mitch is on the books for 2 more years. Yeah, but he's going to get cut. They're going to cut him.
They have
He's not staying. Just because he's on the books for 2 years doesn't mean that he's staying. He's gone.
Yeah, the dead cap isn't that. The Steelers will save, I think, like $7 or $8 million if they cut him.
Yeah, so he's gone.
I would use that to pay Mason. I don't know if he's going to be willing to take that, but
yeah, I mean, he might be getting something better in it. Like, depending how this year goes off, maybe there might be another team. I don't know. Let's see here. Let's see. Let's see. Who has the best arm of the three? Probably Mace. Because the thing is that Mitch, I'm not going to say Mitch does not have an arm, but dude, his throw release is one of the worst throw releases I think I've ever seen. Like his whole entire from the wind up to his release to where his legs are at when he throws, dude, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. It's one of the worst ones I've ever seen.
I can't stand how he throws off his back foot.
Oh, dude,
like
it's
constantly.
ugly. It's ugly.
Yeah, and it's like every time he gets a little bit of pressure, he just kind of like throws it up and like falls on the ground facing the other way, like he's just throwing up a prayer. And I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Can't stand it. No. I can't stand him. You know, when one of my good friends, his name's Chris Hendricks. He's a New Orleans Saints fan, and when not this past offseason, but the offseason before, when free agency came around and the draft came around, he said that they were, probably looking at a couple quarterbacks. He wanted to go with Jameis Winston still. And I would tease him. I was like, dude, y'all going to get Mitch Trubisky.
Was he a Bears fan?
No, he's a Saints fan. He hated. He thought Mitch Trubisky. Yeah, I was making fun of him. I was like, y'all going to get Mitch. Y'all going to get Mitch. This past offseason. Not this one, but the one before.
2 years ago. Right.
Yeah. I was making fun of him saying, y'all going to get Mitch Trubisky. And then I guess I jinxed us because we ended up getting him. And then the draft comes, and I tell them, hey, man, and this was more hopeful wishing, to be honest with you, because the Saints were ahead of us. I was like, I think the Saints are going for a quarterback. They're going to get Kenny Pickett. So I was teasing him with those two quarterbacks. Basically what I'm trying to say is before they became Steeler fans, I did it to myself. And, I thought very little of these guys as far as their talent and what they were going to be able to do for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's funny seeing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Tomlin came out in his press conference this past week, and when they asked about Mason's deep ball ability and stuff like that, what makes a quarterback good at throwing the deep ball and stuff like that, and he said there's a lot of components to that, and the first one is arm talent. Mm-hmm. I think that was a shot at Pickett. It's arm talent. You got to be able to throw the ball out there. You got to have the arm strength. You got to be able to put the ball in
Daniel,
position.
let me ask you this hypothetically. If Mike Tomlin was presented this offseason of getting a guy, either let's say a Justin Fields, or let's say a guy in the top 12 for the draft, or just rolling with Kenny as QB1, what decision you think he would do?
Well, I don't think it's going to be Tomlin's decision. That's the problem.
From what I'm hearing, I'm asking you, what if he's given that option? Given just he's not a dumb guy, but given that option.
So what are the choices again? Getting another quarterback in the draft, or sticking with Kenny, or free agency?
Quarterback in the draft, let's say somewhere in the top 12, top 13, or let's say the Bears make Justin Fields available because they're going to draft Caleb Williams.
Right. He's probably going with a veteran quarterback. I think that's the rumors right now. You're probably not going to like him, but the rumor is that, and this is actually coming from, StillCurrentNetwork.com, our editor, who does have an insider. The Steelers are looking at Russell Wilson pretty heavily.
Right. And I was gonna mention that's been thrown out.
The reason being is because Denver owes him so much money that he'd be on a veteran minimum deal. That's the problem. The Steelers they don't like to spend money. They don't like to spend capital. They could have, the year before, in Ben's last year, been aggressive in that draft and gone up and gotten a quarterback. They waited to the week quarterback class to have one fall to them at 20.
Right.
You know, they could have gone out and spent and traded for different ever quarterbacks that were out there. I think Aaron Rodgers was one of them. I mean, Aaron Rodgers ended up tearing his Achilles tendon or rupturing that because of the turf there in New York. But you can't tell me, you know, with his ability to throw the ball down the field and his accuracy, that the Steelers wouldn't probably be like freaking 11-3 right now.
What if they had Russ?
If they had Rodgers.
Oh, Aaron?
Yeah.
Might as well keep Trubisky. No, Wilson's better than Mitch. Wilson's better than Mitch. Like I don't think Wilson's been really that great, and his best days are behind him. But he's definitely better than Mitch. What do you think, Daniel? What do you think if those rumors came true and Russell Wilson hopped on for 2 years here? How would you feel about it?
I hope Mason is still on the team. I would hope Mason is still on the team.
So let's say Russell Wilson, Kenny, and either Mason or another quarterback.
I think it's a weak room, man. Even with Mason, I mean, I think Mason's average, but I think that it's kind of like what we saw in Mason Cole, right? We saw Mason Cole come from after Kendrick Green, and he looked like a stud because of what we saw with Kendrick Green.
Yeah,
you know, we look at Mason Rudolph's stats: 2 touchdowns, 290 yards, 17 completions, had a couple of splash plays from his receivers. That's an average day for a quarterback. He didn't thread the needle. He didn't put the ball in a tight spot. He didn't win the game on a fourth quarter drive, things like that. You know, it was an average night. I think that if the Steelers want to get to where they want to get to, they need an above average quarterback. And I think Russell Wilson at this point in his career, and you know how old he is, he's probably at the average. I think he's better than Mitch, but he's still probably around that average range.
I agree.
You know, I question his maybe his mental there was a scene that happened not too long ago where Sean Payton was yelling at him on the sideline, Russell Wilson, and it very much looked like it was something. I think it was Colin Cowherd who said that it looked like it was something that Payton had been trying to tell Russ, this is what you do in this situation. You know, this is where the play's supposed to go, and he was not doing it right over and over again. So I'm concerned about that. I'm hoping somebody else gets into that, you know, bidding range, and the Steelers not get it.
I agree.
I would prefer Justin Fields
I'm not really
over.
too crazy. Yeah, I agree. I'm not too crazy about the Russell Wilson to hear stuff. You're better off going a different direction, even though the Broncos pay him too much money. He wasn't what Denver hoped to be. His best days were behind him, man. Once he started decreasing in Seattle, I didn't think that. Like he had a little left in the tank, but his best days were starting to get behind him, and he's going to be 35, 36 next year.
Yeah, and how do you think George Pickens is going to react to "Let's Ride" and high knees in the
Steeler Nation? Let's die,
and high knees on the plane and
my goodness, dude. No, it's not. I don't know, dude. I think that there's better options out there for him than the Steelers that would be more beneficial for him. The Steelers are in a situation where you just drafted a quarterback last year and it's not really working out, and it's probably not the best just to go to a 36-year-old veteran that is really kind of just still mid at the end of the day. Like his numbers this year, if you look at them on paper, aren't bad, but really when you watch him play, it outweighs the numbers, and it's not worth it. It's not worth bringing him in.
Our Barley 18 comes
Barley,
in.
appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming in, dude. Thanks for the donation. Thanks for putting your thoughts out there, as we've seen them through the chat.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It says pass pro issues are 70% on Kenny. Not only doesn't he doesn't stand in the pocket, he doesn't even drop straight back on rhythm and the right step count. He fades to his side. I would agree. You know, I've watched a lot of Kenny Pickett film. I've gone to a lot of games. How many games did I go to this year? I went to the Cleveland game. I went to the Houston game. I went to the Tennessee game. And I'll tell you this, like what I noticed from him, I don't like the way he throws the ball either.
Yeah.
You know,
his
release is real slow.
It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah. And it's like, so I watched the 3 quarterbacks throwing the ball in pregame warmups, and the other 2 quarterbacks are are like half the time the release. It's that much quicker. And for me, it seems like Kenny Pickett's trying to look cool throwing the ball. Like he throws it and then he like waves his shoulders back and forth. And he does that in pregame and he does that during the game. And I'm like, what are you
Oh
doing,
my
dude? Just
God.
throw the ball right, man. You don't have to look cool throwing the ball. Dude, go back and watch it. He throws
Yeah.
it and then he does this weird shoulder thing, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
got it. And I'm just
Right.
like, dude, stop, man. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that bothers
Yeah.
me a lot. And
It's not there, man. It's not good. Yeah. Mile High Mitch. I got a load of that, dude. That's hilarious. Dude, I think a team like the Falcons would benefit with Russell Wilson. I really do. They're young. They have a good run game. They're an offensive-minded team, and Russell Wilson, and they have a good enough roster, have an upcoming defense where they wouldn't need a quarterback to, because they're 100% going to get a new quarterback, but they don't need a quarterback to come in and throw 35 touchdowns or something like that. They have the playmakers enough in the backfield to be able to produce offensively. But if you're able to get a little bit of what you got, if Atlanta had this year's Russell Wilson, they definitely would be leading their division 100%. So like it's a team like that, I think that would be better suited for him than him coming out here. I really do. You know, who's another team I could see is the Raiders. The Raiders are stupid. You know,
just don't
I
say
could
the
see the
Saints,
Raiders.
man.
Why not?
Just
Why
don't say the
not?
Saints, because when I said the last two quarterbacks I said were going there, they end up here. So
Yeah. Yeah.
just don't say they're going to the Saints. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen. Who knows? Maybe Mason does pull off a few games, you know, and gets
Yeah.
into the playoffs, wins a playoff game. You know, if Mason Rudolph gets the Pittsburgh Steelers into the championship, what's that
Into
story going
where?
to be like? You into the AFC championship. I
Oh,
mean,
God.
right now, who would they play? They would play what? Maybe perhaps was it Miami the first round?
If they would get in as the last seed,
Yeah, I think they would
whoever
get
the 2
Miami.
seed would be. Yeah, whoever that
They
2
got
seed would be.
Miami, and then they
Yeah.
would get the Ravens.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
those are teams that I think the Steelers can compete with. I'm not going to say they're going to beat them. You know, especially the Ravens, or with both those teams, Miami. If the Steelers are going up against Miami, they're going to need Minka Fitzpatrick back. You know, Trent
They need
Thompson's
all the
going to have
help
to
they
come
can
back.
get, dude.
KZ will be back. So from
Yeah.
his suspension. So maybe
Yeah.
perhaps at that moment, you know, I think that they can do something. I think the Steelers have Lamar Jackson's number. You
Yeah.
know, I think they can, not easily, but I think that they can find themselves there. I mean, if they do, I think you have to make a move to keep Mason on the team.
Oh, well, yeah, for sure. Like, I don't think that if that would happen that you would just let him go like that. Like, he would have to be playing some really darn good football for that to happen, especially
Yeah,
with where
something
they're
like
at as
this.
a team, 100%.
5 TDs.
Oh, good God.
That would be amazing.
I
That
can't
would be
remember last
amazing.
time they were quarterback or what year that was they had a performance like that.
It's probably the year Ben did it
And it was
back to
obviously
back
Ben,
with
but
6.
it was just a matter of what year that was.
Yeah. I mean, if Mason does that, if he throws for 4 TDs or even in the next 2 games, if he puts up 4 TDs in this one, I mean, 2 TDs in this game, 2 TDs in the next, he would have tied Kenny
Might
Pickett
be
for the touchdowns on the year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, that's
it
just like,
is,
that's the thing. Like, if that would happen.
yeah. And, you know, Tomlin talks about football justice. That's the one thing that he brings up the most. You know, he likes football justice. He thinks that Kenny Pickett is going to have his football justice because of the work that he puts in. I mean, there's no better football justice story than Mason Rudolph, in my opinion. I mean, the guy got booed 2 years ago just for stepping on a
100%.
preseason field.
Yeah,
On a
that was
preseason
ridiculous.
field.
That was ridiculous. I don't know why that any fan would do that. I mean, the guy's on your team, you know, the guy's on the team
Yeah.
to support and stuff. You don't have to like him or think he's the future guy or the starter, but my God.
Yeah, just for stepping on the field in a preseason game. Because he came before Kenny. And so it's gone full circle. Like I said, I don't think anybody had it on their bingo card that Mason Rudolph would be chanting, or the chance of Mason Rudolph would be coming out of Acrisure. But they have, and now he's the starting quarterback. It's insane. But let's get to some predictions before we call it a show. So we'll start off with who do you think is going to win the game? What do you and what are some statistics that you think rushing,
right.
passing, sacks, things like that?
All right. Well, before I say the final score, if we're going to do a statistics standpoint, I don't think Pickens is going to have the game he had last week. I think we will see a little bit more tight end usage. I'm going to say, I'll just go with the main guys. Let's say, I'm going to say Freiermuth leads the team in yards this game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say he leads the team in yards. I'm going to say with maybe 80 some yards. I think Najee and Jalen will run for over 100 yards combined. I say at least one of them get a touchdown. I'm going to say that Deontay gets a touchdown, and both him and Pickens are held for under 80 yards. And I'm going to say Mason throws. I'm going to say he throws. I'll say he throws for, because like I said, I could see it being a situation where the Steelers have to start throwing more. I'll say he throws for 260 yards. I'll say that he throws 1 touchdown and 1 interception. And I'm going to say that the Steelers lose. I'm going to say 26-19.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
So a whole touchdown away.
Yeah, I do.
So,
and the reason why I say that is because I'm being cautiously reserved because Mason Rudolph had a solid game last week. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's going to go off this week. Seattle's in a situation as well. They're trying to get in the playoffs. They throw the ball heavy. The Steelers are very injured at linebacker, and in their secondary, they have Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, all 4 guys that can make plays. And I think it might just be a little bit too much for the Steelers to handle, the Steelers to come back on. And so I'm keeping that type of mindset on that. And I think that they'll run the football pretty well, but I think that they're going to struggle a little bit in Seattle and struggle a little bit in their passing offense. And Seattle's tough to play in, man. Seattle's not an easy spot to play at. So that's what I'm going to say. That's what I'm going to say. And the Steelers season ends on Sunday.
Good. Well, not good deal.
It
wouldn't be good for the Steelers, but I'll say this before I give my prediction: the Steelers are undefeated when I've chosen the other team, so that might give you an indication of where I'm going, just for the sake of winning.
Keep it going, Daniel. Keep going.
So,
let's be wrong, man.
Right. First and foremost, I do think that this is probably going to be a game where we're going to find out if Mason has that fourth quarter thing. That it factor, what Kenny's been able to do in the fourth quarter by doing those, late game drives, fourth quarter comebacks, things of that nature. I think that this is going to be a game that is going to probably take a little bit longer for the Steelers to get going offensively, probably because of the noise and the stadium. If the Steelers defense can get out there and do something, maybe create a turnover early, they can quiet the noise, and I think that'll help this offense. But I do think that the Steelers are going to be able to run the ball and target Pat Freiermuth, given the fact that they're going to be seeing Devin Bush. But I do think this is going to be a game that's going to go down to the wire. I'm going to go 29-27 Seattle.
Okay.
I almost said Steelers.
Dude, I would actually like
Seattle.
to see that happen for Mason Rudolph, to be honest. It'd be in a fourth quarter situation to try to win the game. I would actually kind of like to see that situation just for fun, just to kind of see. Fast starts necessary for the Steelers. Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is, especially in Seattle. It's just the concern, man. Seattle's been pass heavy lately. They have good playmakers on the outside, and the Steelers are very injury riddled back there, and it's a thing of concern. So we can do like baseball, calling Kenny to close it out. 3 quarters for Mace, fourth quarter for Kenny.
Yeah, something like that.
Post was a Ben thing, 24-20, 20 black and gold. Yeah, it's definitely possible. It was a Big Ben thing. They always struggled out there. They're 2-0 this year on it. Versus the Lions leading 2 inning drives. The DJ Moore fumbled in the Browns game. He led the Lions game. What are you talking about? Oh, from a couple years ago. Touchdown drive. We lost 24-22 and dropped 2 points. Yeah, I was at that Lions game, man. It was just an overall crappy game. It sucked. That was probably the worst game I've ever been to.
Yeah, but he does make a point that at the end of the game, Mason did kind of put the team in position to win. I think didn't Boz miss a field goal too?
I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty miserable day, weather-wise. When Boz misses a field goal, it's typically not a good day for the Steelers. I've noticed that.
Yeah, dude,
Uh,
that Lions game sucked, man. That was the worst football game I've ever been to. The weather played a lot in that game too. I just hated it.
Yeah. And I just think that at the end of the day, if we see that from Mason, like let's just say this game, they're going into the fourth quarter, maybe 5 minutes left on the clock, and the
Yeah.
Steelers are down by one, right? Maybe it's 27-28 or something at that time. I think Mason can get the ball into field goal position and to win the game in that type of situation. And if they're down by 4, that's going to be the concern for me.
Yeah.
One of the things that I don't think we've seen yet from Mason Rudolph, and I could be wrong, but he hadn't had a red zone touchdown throw. And if I remember correctly, I think that was kind of one of the issues that he had before is, he was too safe with the ball. And when he got into the red zone, he would throw the ball too high or things like that. So I think we're going to have to see that change because I think we're going to heavily run
it's
the
not
ball.
even to say like really, because Mason's been on the team since 2018, right? So he was drafted in 2018 in the 3rd round, and he's getting this opportunity here in the final 3 game. Well, this game, possibly next week, depending on what happens. And I'm not going to sit here and label him really anything. But who's to say that like he just didn't get better over that time? Who's to say that he just didn't get better sitting there and being a professional the way he has over the last 4 to 5 years? Like, who's to say he just didn't really develop a lot better from his mind, from his IQ standpoint, from fundamentals, right? Like, who's to say that? So I think that this game's going to be interesting for him as well, and possibly even that last game. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. If we tie, we're out. Are we out? I don't think like they'd be eliminated, but
No, they
like,
wouldn't. They would need a lot of help though.
They would need a lot of help because they didn't win. And that's the thing. Like that last wild card spot, 10 games is probably going to get that. So
Wait, hold on. Let me think. It depends on Buffalo. Because Buffalo already has 10 wins. No, I think we would be out because we would need Tennessee and the Colts to lose out, and they play each other, so one of them are going to win.
right.
So yeah, I think if we tie, we could be out.
Regardless, if they don't win, the chances are done.
Right. Well, I think everybody would know we wouldn't be out. Tennessee and not Tennessee. I keep saying Tennessee. Houston and the Colts would have to lose today, and then next week they would have to. If they lost today and we tied, then we would go ahead of them. If those teams lost, because we'd be half a game ahead. So I mean, a tie wouldn't. I mean, the other teams have to lose. If the other teams win, and we tie, I think we're out. So that's basically where it's at.
Yeah, really, at the end of the day, they need a win.
Yeah, that's where.
But they did it to themselves, dude. Really, this team did it to themselves. Let's be honest. You had a 2 home game stretch against the Cardinals and the Patriots, and just because Kenny got injured, you're telling me you can't beat a 2-win team?
Yeah.
Like seriously, like there's no excuse for it. You can sit and say, well, deplete. It doesn't matter. It doesn't freaking matter, dude. You have the whole rest of the game. You have the whole rest of the game. This is the highest paid defense in the league, and Kyler Murray shredded them with no receivers on that roster, with maybe a upcoming rookie tight end and James Conner. But seriously, like there's no excuse for it. As bad as Mitch is still, and then you lose to the Patriots the next 4 days.
So in order for the Steelers to make the playoffs real quick, Buffalo has to lose out and the Steelers have to win out. Steelers would have the tiebreaker over Buffalo. Either the Colts, I think Jacksonville has to lose a game. If Jacksonville loses a game, one of these two, and the Steelers win out, I think they're in because the Colts and the Texans play each other. So that's the easiest way, I think, is have one of those teams lose and then also Jacksonville lose. And then the Steelers are in the easiest way. If not, I mean, we're going to need, I mean, the easiest, well, obviously the easiest way for the Steelers to get in is if Buffalo, the Texans and the Colts lose today. and Jacksonville. The Steelers would be in. I think they'd be number 5 or 6 behind the Browns. If the Bills lose, Steelers win, Colts lose, and the Texans lose, the Steelers jump to number 5 in the playoff seat.
Right.
Because I think the Steelers would be then tied with Buffalo, and they have the tiebreaker. Because I think Buffalo has 9 wins, not 10.
They do have 9 wins. Yes.
So yeah, the Steelers would jump to 9, and yeah, so there's a chance. I mean, Trevor Lawrence ain't playing today, I don't think.
No, he's
I
out.
think he's out.
There's only one game today, Daniel. Tomorrow.
Or
it's Lions
tomorrow,
and Cowboys tonight. So Bills are playing the Patriots, so that's going to be a little difficult. But you have Texans playing the Titans. That can kind of go either way, especially if CJ Stroud's not fully 100%. And then you have the Colts play the Raiders, and the Raiders have been winning some games. So I don't know.
Don't count out those divisional games. You know, Bills and Patriots. You can't divisional games. That's why, like, when I go do the like a Survivor League, you know, I usually get pretty far, and I have a couple of rules. I don't pick divisional games, and I don't pick the obvious blowout, because those two have been what kind of, you know, screws up everything, right? And so divisional games are tough. You know, CJ Stroud, this is his first game back from his concussion. I think that every quarterback, their first game coming back from a concussion, usually don't play well. So I think that there's a scenario there where he can falter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, man. If the Steelers somehow find themselves in a win and get in situation next week, I mean, dang, you can't ask for anything else at that point. The Steelers have put themselves in the position to compete. Let's go do it. Let's go get it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
It's gonna be interesting. It's unpredictable for the AFC, so that's kind of really the one positive that I look at this year for the NFL, is that you don't really have elite teams in the NFL this year. You don't really have kind of really everybody's in the same pond for the most part, and it's more not really very good, but it does make it unpredictable in the AFC. So the NFL has that going for them, at least.
Yeah. Well, we're about an hour and 22 in it. I'm going to ask you one last question and let everybody know where you can find you. Last question is, does Mason Rudolph take the field week 18?
Great question. Great question. Well, given my prediction, I'm going to say no. But I think that it's possible. I'm not, just because it's my prediction, and I don't think that, because I gave the prediction that I don't think that Rudolph's gonna blow the socks off, and it's being more of a reserved type way of not going over the boat on him, like that he's gonna put up an even better performance than he did on last week. So given that, the Steelers lose like I predicted, and Mason Rudolph doesn't, he's just kind of they'll probably start Kenny that last game, if that's how it goes. If the Steelers lose and Rudolph maybe plays really well, maybe they'll give him that extra shot, maybe for his sake or something, and they'll be like, hey, Kenny, we're just gonna let you roll in the offseason. But there's a couple factors into it. Now, if they win, and if Rudolph still kind of stinks, let's say they win and Rudolph doesn't really play well, but they still find a way to win, that's going to be an interesting conversation. But obviously the easiest thing is they win, Rudolph does fairly well, and then they roll with him again. But given what I said, given just kind of how I feel how this game's going to go out, I'm going to say no.
Gotcha. Yeah, for me, I'm going to say that. Oh, and everybody can find you at In Hindsight. I believe it's in the description.
Yes, you guys can find me at In Hindsight. Yes. So Daniel and I, for anybody new in here, we do this show at least once a week on our channels back and forth. I put up Steeler content and other sports content, best consistency that I can over there. So I appreciate everybody new that has gone over there and has subbed and support the channel. But yeah, you guys can hit me up over there. So yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of my, if I'm gonna base it off of my prediction, that's gonna be my answer.
Put Ben Roth in. That's my buddy Jonathan. Yeah, man. There was a time where everybody
Possible,
in the
Brian.
Ben
Yeah.
Roethlisberger podcast and footballing were begging him to come back. Not too long ago, you know, it was right after Mitch threw probably his 5th interception. Everybody ran to the footballing, and we're putting in donations for him to come in. And for me, as far as, you know, Mason Rudolph playing the next week, I think it's solely going to depend on if they win. You know, if the Steelers go out there and they win and they're in a winning effort, and it's not, you know, despite Rudolph, I think he'll get the start. Now, even if he plays really, really well and they lose, let's just say it comes down to that 29-28, you know, loss that I was talking about. I think you're going to see Kenny in there just to see what he has back again, see if he can, you know, maybe replicate what Rudolph did.
If he would play that last game, if Kenny would play that last game, like, dude, you still have something to prove. Even if the Steelers aren't going to get in, like, you still have something to show.
Yeah. And if he doesn't prove anything or show anything, even, you know, 4 or 5 weeks after his injury, now that he's healed up and he's still the same guy. Yeah. Against Ravens backups, it's, you know, you're definitely going to have your answer there as far as what you need to do with the quarterback position. Every person in this chat told me 13-4. Yeah, that might be the score in the week 2 playoffs. Steelers 13. Well, I don't think they can get 4. But
oh my goodness, they had 2 safeties.
You know, I thought that they would get to 11. I thought they would get to 11 this offseason. That's where I was at. You know, if they went out, they get to 10. I'm off. Yeah, that's not too bad. It's not too bad.
I gave them about 10 just because I thought they would have been a little better than last year. But yeah, Brian said 17 now, man. Brian said 17 now. So Steelers have their homework cut out for them this offseason. It's going to be their biggest offseason in quite a while. What can Kenny show at this point to negate the bad play that's already been shown? I think just doing the simple things, man, the routine things that he's not doing. I think you can start there, to be honest with you.
You know,
I think just
Kenny had himself. I think Kenny had his best game against Cincinnati with when Matt Canada was fired. In Arizona, he had half a game, and points wise, it was kind of, you know, status quo, right? 16 points. That's what we've been averaging. Yeah, I think that if he can go out there and kind of show that he can put up multiple touchdowns in a game, kind of replicate what Mason Rudolph did, you know, put up 2-3 touchdowns, maybe 300 yards, you know, that would kind of give something to work on. But if he goes out there and puts up 1 touchdown through the air and 180 yards, you know, as well, then it's the same old. So there's not much he can show there at that point. But, you know, I just think that Mason's just a better quarterback than him at this point. At this point, I don't know when, you know, when Mason hits 28, you know, he's 5 right now, about to be 26, so he's got about 2.5 years. You know, when he hits 28 and he's still, if he's even with the Steelers and he's performing that way, then, you know, obviously it was Mason's better quarterback. But today, right now, I think Mason is a better quarterback and gives the Steelers a better option to win or better chance to win.
That's fair. I think that they need to really do their homework on the quarterback room next year, man. I really do. I don't want to see him in the same situation this year.
But that's the concern, right? I mean, they saw Kenny Pickett play for like 6 years in Pitt, and they still thought, like, because he had 1 year, you know, his last year that was good, that he's going to be something. I don't know. I don't want to get all the way back into it, but I want to thank everybody for joining, and for all the new subscribers and all our new and those that donated. Thank you again to our Barley 18 for your donation.
Absolutely,
earlier.
guys.
We appreciate
always good seeing you guys in the chat. For those who are new, or just kind of come in free here and there, appreciate you guys as well. Always good to see your guys' thoughts and opinions and comments in the chat that we try to cover and talk about with you guys as much as we can. So we thank you guys all for tuning into the show, and we'll see what happens tomorrow.
100%. I'll probably be back tomorrow. doing a post-game show after the game. Remember, it's at 4 p.m. Eastern. So look for that live to be around 7:30. We'll be talking about the game and talking about the Steelers' chances moving on to the following week. With that being said, we're out of here. We'll see you next time. Peace.
And we're still here. So
yeah, it was the same thing when I hit